Last year, I made a video popularizing the solid arguments against building a mega mosque in Bucharest. The mosque still isn't there and likely will not be there anytime soon, if ever. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Alright, so to understand at least some of the context, please do watch this video that I made in July last year, outlining the controversy itself and the background story going as far back as the 15th century. Yeah, we do go long way back with the Turks. That's why we tend to be the canary in the coal mine when it comes to extreme versions of Islam in Europe. Okay. So, henceforth, I'll assume you have watched the video I made last year and won't repeat what's been said then. Now, since then, certain things have happened. They did try, twice, to commence the construction of the mosque, and both of the times the construction workers were met with protests. Also, in the meantime, a pig was buried on the site and the 2 meters and 20 centimeters rock-solid cross was erected there, weighing around a ton. Now that particular cross is over 100 years old, so tearing that one apart is also legally problematic because it's a historical monument fixed into a large amount of concrete by the protesters who own it. But the religiously motivated shenanigans are of little importance to me. What matters more is the reactions of the institutions, which were completely reversed to what I expected. The Romanian Orthodox Church sided with the Muslim lobby and condemned the erection of a 100-year-old holy cross and also refused to sanction an open-air Christian mass to be held there. Now, the mass was held anyway by dissident priests who had previously left the church precisely because of its increasingly mercantilist focus. Again, I won't get into that too much. The secular state institutions, however, slowly backed down from the project. So whereas I would have expected the church to be the leading voice and the secular institutions to be more concerned with tolerance, even if that would include tolerance for the largest Islamic center in Europe, quite the opposite occurred. I have to admit that I did not see that coming. Now, this happened largely because of two reasons. One, of course, is the protests. Nobody wants to piss off the people on a topic on which most of the nation has a clear-cut position that leaves no room for PC and cucking for Islam. And given that 2016 is an election year, you really don't want to piss off everyone. Second is the fact that the general mayor of the capital city has been arrested on charges of corruption unrelated to this scandal. Also, the mayor of one district of the capital city was also arrested in an unrelated corruption scandal. What this means is that the general city hall is led by an interim mayor who cannot legitimately make further decisions on this topic. This also means that the voters in Bucharest are very pissed off with the establishment, for bloody good reason I might add. So everyone is expecting the elections to solve or at least alleviate some of that, though I'm not that optimistic. But then again, I tend to hold an anti-Bucharest bias, and I'm quite open about that. So, for a significant period of time, between July last year and present day, the topic kind of fell out of the public discourse because no one in charge dared to make a move, and the activist groups were on guard at any moment anyway to prevent any further moves. Now, Western Europeans should take notes on this one, really. Anyway, the topic re-emerged after the president, Klaus Iohannis, made an official visit on March 23rd to Turkey, where he met the infamous Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the 12th president of the Turkish Republic. And yes, that's the correct pronunciation. The G is muted if it has that particular sign above it. Now, following that visit, the headlines were to the effect of "the mosque will be built for sure," and claimed that that was the position of the president. Except that wasn't the position of the president. The position of the Romanian president is, quote, "We are in the phase of soliciting construction authorization. This matter is the competence of the Bucharest City Hall," end quote. and the original text on the screen in case someone questions it. In other words, the president cannot do anything no matter how much he would want to. And we don't even know if he approves the idea or not. And it doesn't even matter what Iohannis thinks about this. It's not in his powers to sway things towards yay or nay. So here comes the problem for the supporters of the mosque. Local elections are scheduled on June the 5th, and as we get closer to that, the election season gets into fever. And guess what? The mosque is one of the topics in Bucharest, and nobody is for outright authorizing it. Now let me run you through the positions expressed so far by the contenders. The Liberal candidate, which is sort of a right-wing but only sort of, I know of exactly one parliamentarian from the Liberal Party that is actually a right-winger. Anyway, so the Liberal candidate, Ludovic Orban, says that he excludes outright any possibility of him ever authorizing the construction of the mosque, citing that all available research shows that 3 out of 4 voters in Bucharest adamantly oppose the project. The left-wing candidate, Gabriela Vânceanu-Firea, has a slightly more nuanced position, but not by much. Her position is, quote, if the people of Bucharest would want a mosque to be built, then the administration should abide. I think it's very important that politicians, both on a national level and in local administrations, to stop making decisions based on their own opinion or their family's opinions, but get into the habit of making decisions after popular consultation, such as after a referendum. The media claims that Mrs. Firea is the most likely to win the city hall, though I'm not particularly convinced by that. But even so, the frontrunner wants a referendum, which is not exactly good news for the establishment because, again, less than a quarter of people actually do support the construction of this mosque. Moving further to the hippie candidate, Nicușor Dan, he also wants a referendum and then a strict adherence to his desire of how the city should look like. And mind you, this idiot has a hardline bureaucratic view of a local administration. But anyway, in practice, should he win, there would be no mosque anytime soon. There's no way simply that that mosque can fulfill his bureaucratic ideals. Going further to the M10, the party led by Monica Macovei, MEP for the European Conservatives and Reformists, says that the erection of religious building is not a priority at all for her and should rather focus on increasing funding for universities. The chap that runs for the district in which the mosque is to be built, the mayor of that district is essentially the last authorizing line. This guy runs from the political party built by the former president, Traian Băsescu, and he's the most ardent opponent of this project. He stated that he'd only authorize it if Stephen the Great himself gives him the blessing to do so, and that the Romanian Muslim community can keep and practice its faith without turning Bucharest into a pilgrimage center for Muslims all over Europe. So, in other words, the euphoria of the middle-class left-wing multiculti pricks in the cathedral media manifested after Iohannis' visit to Turkey is completely misplaced, really. I have yet to see any candidate, regardless of his or her polling, that actually supports this thing. Maybe there is one, but I have not been able to find him or her. Which doesn't really surprise me, as this is still a largely homogeneous nation with actual borders and with an actual interest in still existing. Yeah, it ain't perfect, but it's good enough to be worth keeping. Now, the only way I can see this project going through at this point is via a long chain of betrayals. So not only the next mayor would have to make a U-turn from the campaign promise, but also the mayor of the district where the land is located and the whole civil service would have to go along with it, which is unlikely. I mean, I know people in the Bucharest civil service, none of them wants an Islamized sector. In addition to that, the city would have to be willing to use serious force against protesters, which they could safely do, as they did in the past, provided they would have national support, which they don't in this case. It's not uncommon for massive amounts of people all over the country to go to the capital city and act radically if the central or local government goes full retard, or at least it's perceived as going full retard. Now, last time this happened in 2012, and the politicians know it, that it can happen again. Now, some sections of the cathedral media, most of it being located in Bucharest, will try its best in the following months leading up to the election to paint any opposition to the construction of the mosque as being fascist or some similar nonsense like that. But that won't fly at the end of the day. The project is not popular at all, not even within the indigenous Muslim community, which is of Tatar origin. They perceive it as a threat to their 150 years good understanding with the Romanian majority. And they're right. If this is pushed through with the face of the Mufti on it, the century-and-a-half long tolerance may end quite abruptly. And nobody wants that. Last time the media tried to portray half of the nation as fascist, it really did not end quite well. I am of course referring to the 2014 elections, when anyone not supporting the insurgent socialist candidate was portrayed as a totalitarian. Well, the socialists lost that one on quite a wide margin. Now, the fact that Iohannis turned out to be quite disappointing to some, that's a different story, though to be fair, I didn't expect anything from him. I mean, his Calvin Coolidge type of behavior, where he doesn't really do anything and avoids taking positions, is not particularly stellar and sometimes admittedly quite a bad idea, but it's overall far better than what was expected of his adversary. I guess it's better not to expect much from politicians. That usually prevents quite a lot of unavoidable disappointment. Anyway, that's the situation with the mosque as it stands right now, and if major developments occur, I'll come back with another video on this topic. As promised, we follow through the stories here on Freedom Alternative, especially the ones that are of particular interest to our audience. Oh, and one more thing. An Islamist organization called the Islamic Sisters quite literally manufactured an assault so that the pricks in the cathedral media can blame everyone for it and claim it's all because of the radicalization against the mosque project. Now, bad news for the agitprop machine though. The source of the incident is an organization who's had half of its members deported and banned less than 2 years ago for terrorist activity, or well, actually for plotting terrorist activity. So yeah, we can expect a lot more of such provocations in the near future. I mean, this is going to be one hell of a ride. And with that being said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon on Freedom Alternative.